Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips. I have some really important stuff to share with you today, but just a few quick announcements. Our conference is coming up November 11 through 13. Great food. It's in Columbus, Ohio. You can buy a remote ticket, but if you buy an in-person conference ticket, you get to participate in my long COVID workshop, which I'm doing the first of the year. Lots of research going into putting this together, which is why I'm not going to offer it this year, but at the beginning of next year in January. Dr. Steve Keeby has joined the roster of speakers. He's a pediatrician. If you have lots of questions you'd like to ask pediatricians, he's the guy to ask. He's just one of many speakers, and you can see the whole roster of the whole lineup at WellnessForumHealth.com. The IBS boot camp is this weekend, Friday at 7 p.m. I have a 7-class series on IBS. And for people who say that would be great, but I don't think I want to sit through 7 classes and do homework assignments. So I just want to learn the basics about all of this and figure out what's going on with me. This is the workshop for you. 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to film it so that if the time zone you live in doesn't work so well, or you're not available on the 14th, you'll still be able to listen to this class. All right. Don't forget, what's the name of it? Optimal Health with Pam 1 and 2. Words escape me sometimes. Part 1 I've offered every year for a while. We always sell it out. And last year we had to offer it twice. This year I can't do that. I don't have enough weekends. So if you're not in that first group, you got to wait till next fall to do it. And it's all about how to manage your time and how to lower your stress levels and get everything done, including eat well and exercise, and how to build your immune system, and how to get yourself in optimal shape. And a lot of people need a jump start to do it. I promise you'll get a lot out of it. Part 2 deals with aging well. Hair, nails, skin, how to avoid cognitive decline and Alzheimer's disease, and just many, many things. So anyway, if you want a full description, send me an email at pampopper@msn.com. Happy to have my staff reach out to you. And also, last thing, we offer great professional development programs for people who are either not in healthcare and are sitting there saying, I know I can help people if I have a little bit of training, or people who are in healthcare and would like to redirect their careers in a different direction. I'll be happy to send you information. And we have some great special offers, which we always offer only the last quarter of the year. So there's some stuff that's available right now that if you don't do something about it now, you got to wait another year for it to come around. So this would be a good time to send me an email, tell me what your interest levels are, and we will send you some stuff and figure out what's best for you. All right. So I want to talk about personality types and health. All right, so this starts many years ago. I've been in this business 27 years, and I started noticing a long time ago that there were certain types of cancer patients that even though they had really dire prognoses, they survived anyway. And they had some characteristics in common. They tended to be positive people, very determined, independent thinkers. And then in 2013, I read Kelly Turner's what I think is a groundbreaking book called Radical Remission, which confirms some of my observations. Turner interviewed over 1,000 people who had survived terminal cancer to find out how they did it. And they all reported using the same 9 strategies, one of which was they changed their diets. That's not particularly shocking. But they all used 8 other strategies as well, some of which involved resolving issues that were out of balance in their lives. They reported releasing suppressed emotions, increasing their positive emotions and social support. They worked on spirituality, and they all found and identified strong reasons for living. In other words, these people figured out that there was more to cancer than just the biology of cancer. For many of these patients, their quest for alternatives began after conventional treatment failed them. And part of their journey to health involved looking inward. Many felt that their cancer was a message, as it were, telling them to take a look at their lives. I found this fascinating, and I have recommended this book to every cancer patient I've encountered since I read it almost a decade ago. Some interesting new research suggests that there might be some opportunities to use some of what I just shared with you to prevent cancer and other diseases by applying the same type of self-examination while you're in a healthy state. Now, some of this research goes back a long way, way before Turner's book was written. And in 1985, a group looked at the relationship between personality type and stage 1 or 2 cutaneous malignant melanoma, a potentially lethal form of skin cancer. The researchers, led by Lydia Temchok, chose malignant melanoma because it's easy to precisely measure it for defining the extent of disease. The research team assessed cancer by measuring tumor thickness and also applying the Clark scale, like how deeply the melanoma is grown into the skin and which levels of the skin are affected. They also administered questionnaires and interviewed the patients. They were surprised to find that the thickness of the tumors was related to the personality type of the patients. For example, patients with type C personality characteristics, which include being passive, appeasing, helpless, and trusting external authority, tended to have thicker lesions than those who do not have these particular traits. This is not the only research that has shown such a connection. Cardiologists Meyer Friedman and Ray Rosenman studied the connection between personality types and cardiovascular disease. They determined that people who were ambitious, rigid, high achieving, and impatient, and who were often thought of as workaholics, what we would call the type A personality, were more likely to develop high blood pressure and heart disease. Those with type B characteristics, not quite as ambitious, more patient, more flexible, less stressed, were less likely to develop cardiovascular disease. What was most interesting about Friedman and Rosenman's work was the influence of the type C personality characteristics on health. Type C behavior patterns share some characteristics with type A's, but they also tend to have chronic anxiety and insecurity and don't express or process negative emotions very well. Both type A and type C personalities had higher risk than the type B personality characteristics. Well, Temchok and her group noted that type C, back to the cancer research, Temchok and her group noted that type C behavior patterns included being cooperative and patient. Type Cs are generally more calm, consistent, and controlled, and they cooperate well with others. They're more thoughtful about planning for the future, and these are all good things. However, the type C individual is often unassertive, complies with authority, can feel helpless, hopeless, and can have a higher risk of depression. Type Cs can be resistant to conflict, which can lead to repressed emotions. They're sometimes perfectionists who are more prone to anxiety and pessimism. They often defer their own needs to the needs of others, and this can make them more prone to develop cancer, and I'm sure many other conditions as well. A study conducted over 20 years ago showed that this was the case. Researchers analyzed the personality traits of 3,235 subjects, and then 10 years later looked at the cause of death for those who had died. They found that 45% of those characterized as type C had died of cancer. Type A's were more likely to have died from cardiovascular disease, confirming what the cardiologists had found many, many years ago. So what should you do with this information? Well, first, I think it's important to put it in perspective. Personality type is one of many factors that determine the risk of cancer and other conditions. So if you see some type C characteristics in yourself, this doesn't mean that you're going to develop cancer or that you're going to die from it. But back to the radical remission survivors. That's the book Kelly Turner wrote. These people were in a fight for their lives, and they were willing to do anything and everything to survive, including assessing their thinking patterns and behaviors and their relationships with others and their world in general. Perhaps the best time to do it is now, when you don't have cancer or another serious disease. An inventory of the way you're living your life followed by significant change is challenging and scary, and it's a lot of work. But self-improvement can actually be fun when you're not panicked and trying to respond to a health crisis like having cancer. So I'll come back to what I was talking about before. A good start would be optimal health and life with Pam. I mean, I don't pretend to have everything figured out, but somehow by the age of 65, I've managed to find the time to take care of myself and remain pretty happy and centered through all the stress that we've all been experiencing for the last 2.5 years, and to remain healthy while statistics show that the most people are faring a whole lot worse, not better, from a health perspective. So it just might be that I have some things to share with you that might make a big difference in your life. But regardless of whether or not you choose to spend a weekend or two with me virtually learning about health, I'd encourage you to assess what you're doing. I mean, I think that's one of the things that probably is the worst part about modern living. We're busy with everything. It's easy to be distracted, and we pay attention to some things that maybe don't matter as other things. And sometimes what makes us get our priorities in order is a crisis. Well, maybe when not in a crisis state, would be a good time to get your life in order, or in a better order, or a better direction. That's all I'm saying. All right, well, I hope this has been helpful. As usual, pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy watching it, and I will be back to you tomorrow with more news.